It didn't begin with violence, or cruelty, or anything that felt dangerous. In fact, if you had looked at it from the outside, it would have seemed almost harmless. Just another university experiment, another academic study trying to understand something about human behavior. There were no warning signs, no sense that anything could go wrong. Just a simple idea, placed in what seemed like a controlled environment. But sometimes, the most dangerous situations are the ones that look completely safe at the beginning. In 1971, inside Stanford University, a group of college students volunteered for what they believed would be a straightforward psychological study. They weren't criminals. They weren't aggressive, just ordinary young men, the kind of people you'd walk past without a second thought. Some curious, some interested in the money, some just looking for something different to experience. Nothing about them suggested what was about to happen. This would later be known as the Stanford Prison Experiment. The idea behind it was simple, at least on paper. Researchers wanted to understand how people behave when placed into positions of power, and how others react when that power is taken away from them. To test this, they created a simulated prison, not a real one, but something designed to feel real enough. A basement was transformed, turned into cells, corridors, holding areas. Bars were installed, doors locked, rules established. It wasn't just a setting, it was an environment. The students were randomly divided into two groups, guards and prisoners. That was it. No deeper selection, no psychological filtering for aggression or dominance, just random assignment, because the point wasn't to study certain types of people. It was to see what the situation itself would do to them. At first, everything felt like a role. The guards were given uniforms, dark clothing, mirrored sunglasses that hid their eyes, batons that symbolized authority. The prisoners had their names taken away, replaced with numbers. Their clothes stripped down to simple garments. Small details, but powerful ones. Because identity matters, and when you remove it, something changes. The prisoners weren't just told to go to the basement. They were arrested. Real police officers came to their homes, handcuffs, sirens, neighbors, watching. Confusion, embarrassment, even though it was part of the experiment. It didn't feel like one. It felt real. And that was the moment when the line started to blur, because once something feels real, your mind begins to treat it that way. The first day passed without major problems. Instructions were given, rules explained. The guards acted like guards. The prisoners followed along. It felt structured, controlled, manageable. But underneath that calm surface, something was shifting. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, almost unnoticed. The guards began to step into their roles, not just acting but becoming. The authority they were given started to feel natural. They weren't told to be aggressive. They weren't instructed to dominate, but the power was there, and power has a way of changing behavior. Orders became sharper, voices became louder, and then punishments began. At first in small things, push-ups for minor mistakes, standing for long periods, repetition of rules. But slowly, those actions changed in tone. It wasn't just discipline anymore. It became control. The guards started waking prisoners in the middle of the night, disrupting their sleep. They forced them into humiliating situations. They made them feel powerless. Not through physical violence, but through constant psychological pressure. And the prisoners began to change too. At first, they resisted, they questioned, they pushed back. But resistance doesn't last long when the environment is against you, because every action, every rule, every interaction reminded them of one thing: they had no control. Over time, they stopped acting like participants. They stopped thinking like students. They became prisoners, real prisoners. Their posture changed, their voices changed. Some became quiet, withdrawn. Others became emotional, anxious. One prisoner had a complete breakdown, shouting, crying, unable to continue. He wasn't pretending. It wasn't part of the study. It was real. And still, the experiment continued, because something else had changed too. The researchers were no longer just observers. They had become part of the system. They saw what was happening. But they didn't stop it, because the environment had pulled them in as well. And that's what makes this story so unsettling. It wasn't just the guards. It wasn't just the prisoners. It was everyone. The system had taken over. The guards became more aggressive. Not all of them, but enough. Some enjoyed the power. Some tested limits, and when no one stopped them, those limits disappeared. The prisoners were humiliated, forced into situations designed to break them mentally, and slowly. They did break, not physically, but psychologically, because when you take away someone's identity, their control, their sense of self, you don't need violence. The environment does the work for you. And this continued for days. 6 days. That's all it took. 6 days. For ordinary people to change, to become something else, something they didn't expect, something they might not have believed was possible. And then someone from the outside saw it. Not as part of the experiment, but as an observer, and immediately she understood. This wasn't research anymore. This was harm, real harm, and she said something. She challenged it, and in that moment, everything stopped. The experiment was shut down, not after 2 weeks, as planned, but after just 6 days, because it had gone too far. And when it ended, the question remained, how? How did this happen? How did normal people become capable of this? Because they weren't trained. They weren't chosen for aggression. They weren't different. They were ordinary. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because this story isn't about them. It's about us. It's about what happens when environment, power, and identity interact. Because we like to believe we are in control, that we would act differently, that we would resist. But this experiment suggests something else. That under the right conditions, anyone can change, faster than we expect, deeper than we realize. And that's what makes it disturbing, because it doesn't feel distant. It feels possible. And if this story makes you uncomfortable, that's because it should. Because it forces a question that doesn't have an easy answer. What would you do? If you were placed in that situation, given that power, or stripped of it, would you stay the same, or would you change? Because the truth is, we don't really know, and maybe that's the most unsettling part of all. If you want more stories like this, real stories, powerful stories, the kind that make you think, question, and see things differently, then stay here, because history isn't just about what happened. It's about understanding what people are capable of. And the next story might make you question even more.